This video tutorial is going to cover Chapter 6 from the book Adobe Dreamweaver CC. I have opened Dreamweaver and I have my Chapter 5 lessons files open. I'd like you to begin from the mylayout.html file that you created in Chapter 5. If you had any errors, you need to correct them before you move on with this lesson. I'm going to go ahead and open up mylayout.html file, and the code from lines 19 to 34 should match what's in the book on page 125. We're going to start at the top of the web page and we're going to work our way down. I'm going to go ahead and switch my view, but I want it to be code live so I can see the code as well. I'm going to select the first row in my Bootstrap layout, and I'm going to make sure that I'm actually on the div row. And the element that I really want is the div column small. So I'm going to select the div column small tag selector, and I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard. I'm going to go to the insert menu. If your insert menu is not open, it would be under the window menu. I'm in Bootstrap Components. I'm going to look for Navbar. It has a drop-down menu, and I'm going to click Basic Navbar. Up here it tells me the position, and I'm going to select Nest. So our navbar comprises of two separate navigation menus with drop-down components, a search field with buttons, as well as a menu header. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove the drop-down menu on the right side in the navbar. I think it's a lot easier, though, if from here we work in the DOM panel. So I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to say DOM. And I'm just going to drag this all the way up. So I'm going to come over and select the drop-down menu right here. And notice in my DOM panel, it shows up right here on the left-hand side. You can also go to your tag selector. I just think it's going to be easier if we use the DOM panel here. And we want to select the unordered list nav. So I'm going to move this over just a bit so you can see this. So we want to select the unordered list navbar right tag selector. So right here is the tag that we want. If I was to find it in my tag selector, it's just a little bit more cumbersome to me. So you can right click on this and you can just say delete. And now it is gone. We're going to select the search field button. So I'm just going to select in there. And what we want to look for is actually where it says form, navbar left. I think it's just much easier. We're going to right click and say delete. So now we are just left with this menu bar over on the left hand side. I'm going to click the drop down menu where it says drop down. We're going to select the LI where it says LI drop down, and I'm selecting it in my DOM panel. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to say delete. So when I'm right clicking, I'm right clicking right on the tag right here and selecting delete. So now I'm only left with 3 links. So we have 2 of the original links and the word brand. At first you might think that the word is simply another link in the remaining menu, but if we look down here in our code, the brand element could be used for a company name to provide a handy link back to your home page, or perhaps for a page or section title. So that's how this brand link is being used in this navigation. So I have this selected, and over here in my DOM panel, we're looking for the A navbar -brand. I'm going to right click on the tag and I'm just going to say delete. So all the unneeded components have been removed from our navigation menu. We're going to click the first link item, and it says select the text link and type home to replace it. So if I double click on this, it opens up on line 30, and notice it's highlighted right here. I'm going to double click on this and I can just start typing the word home. I'm just going to get out of this by just clicking outside of this. So I can't hit the enter key or it'll go ahead and do a return space. So I just need to click outside of the orange box. I'm going to come over here to the next link item, double click on it. I'm going to change it in my code view. I think it's a little bit easier to do. So I'm just going to highlight this. It's line 31 in my code. And I'm going to type green news. Now I'm just going to click outside of there and it will update that. Adding items to a navigation menu. Well, I'm not going to add it the way that it's called for in the book. I think it's just too cumbersome. So what I'd like to do is click on green news. And I'm going to come over to my DOM panel. And where it says list item, so right here in my DOM panel, right above the A tag. So this list item right here, the very last one that is selected, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. So I'm going to right click on this and duplicate this. And I'm going to duplicate this again. And I'm going to duplicate this one more time. So I have green news duplicated 4 times. What I'd like to do is the first green news I'd like to keep. The second one, if you notice on line 32, I'm just going to change that in my code view. For me, it's easier. I'm going to change that to events. The next one I'm going to change to travel. The last one I'm going to change to tips. And I need to duplicate this one more time. So I'm going to come over here to my DOM panel. Notice it has line 34 selected, so I know I'm at the right line. And I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to say duplicate. And I'm going to duplicate one more time. So these links are on line page 138, step number 18. So this one I'm going to change on line 35 of my code to contact us. And the last one is about us. So I'm just highlighting and typing over top of the highlighted words. So I'm going to scroll up so that you can see my work. And you can see my menu bar up here. So our menu is constructed with an unordered list, and we have 7 list items. It says that the home link is formatted differently from the rest, and that we want to select and delete the attribute class active from the first list item, and we want to do that in code view. So on line 30, I'm going to start right where the space begins, and I'm going to highlight this all the way to the greater than sign, and I'm going to hit the backspace or delete key. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to remove the span class. So I'm going to remove this completely. So now my code has all the links in the menu are now formatted identically. It's common when using a predefined or third-party component, and our third-party component is Bootstrap, that you'll have to modify the original structure and formatting to conform to your own content or project requirements. So I'm going to close my DOM panel for right now because I don't need this anymore. I'm going to come up here to the hamburger menu and I'm just going to say close. And what I need open now is my CSS Designer. So I'm going to come to my window and I'm going to choose CSS Designer. And my CSS Designer now is at the top panel, and my files and everything else is at the bottom. I'm going to just make it a little bit larger for you to see. If you look at the source pane, you can see that the Bootstrap CSS style sheet is marked Read Only. Since the page is based on the Bootstrap framework, Dreamweaver prevents you from modifying and potentially damaging its predefined styling. The styling contained within it is complex and full of interdependencies. It is recommended that any changes or overrides be made in your own custom style sheet. So we're going to create our own CSS file, and it will go ahead and add it to the head section of our mylayout.html. So we're going to go ahead and click the Add button up here where it says Add CSS. And we're going to create a new CSS file. And I'm just going to call mine styles.css. The book says to call it green_styles, but I'm just, for simplicity's sake, calling it styles. And I'm going to select OK. Now, if we scroll up in our code, we will see that our style sheet was added in on line 10, and it was added in below our original CSS bootstrap. And the reason why it was added below is any styles that we would like to overwrite for this bootstrap CSS will have precedence now because of the cascading effect. So I'm on page 147, and I'm just going to skip to step 7. I have my styles selected, and I'm going to go to the Add Selector button right here, and I'm going to type in .row.nav bar, and if you look through here, I can find it. I'm just going to double click on it so I don't type this incorrectly. So you want to select or press the Enter key twice to complete the selector. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to uncheck the Show Set, and 5 categories become available to me. So I have my layout, my text, my border, my background, and more. I'm going to click the background icon, and I'm going to click the background color picker. So I'm just going to click in here. So I'm going to enter down at the bottom #069. And we get a dark blue background, and I'm going to hit enter. So our background color changes from light gray to dark blue. The background color property covers the older browsers that don't support CSS specifications. I'm going to come up here to the File menu, and I'm going to Save All. And that will save my CSS file and my HTML file. So I'm going to go ahead on this same property that we have selected, row navbar, default, and I'm going to change the background image property. So right here where it says gradient, I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to click this top box right here where it says Edit Color Stops. And I'm going to click on the first one, and down here in the bottom it's got an RGB value, and I'm just going to click to hex. It won't really matter because once you start typing it'll automatically change it, but I'm going to type #069. And I'm going to go to the bottom gradient stop right here where it has the red color in it, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to type in #08A. And I'm going to change the linear gradient degrees right up here to 180. So you're just going to want to click in there to complete the gradient. So it looks kind of subtle, but if you look in here, I have a slight gradient. So it goes from 069 to 08A. I'm just going to click out of that. All right, so I'm going to click on one of the links right here. It's kind of hard to see. I can also select it right here in my code view. And I'm going to select the selectors, Add Selector. And what I really want to type in is on page 150, step 7, row.nav. And notice there's no space. There's a space after row, and then there's .nav, but no space after .nav again. And what I would like is nav bar. So nav bar, nav, and I can scroll down and look for it, or I can type it in. And then I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to put a greater than sign, LI, a greater than sign, and A. The greater than symbols you see in the selector name indicates that the rule is targeting only the immediate children of the preceding element rather than any descendants. So I'm going to go down to my properties, and I'm going to go to where it says border. I'm going to select border. So the first property is all sides, but I want to just set the top first. And I'm just going to double click in here and say 1px. I'm going to go to my style, and I'm going to choose solid. I'm going to double click in here for my color, and I'm going to choose pound 0 AE. I'm just going to select out of this or hit enter. I'm going to go to the border right, and I'm going to just double click on this and say 1 pixel. It's easier. Style. So I have my 1 pixel solid. I'm going to go to my bottom. I'm going to type in, double click on this, type 1 pixel. I found that if I double click on style, my Dreamweaver crashes, so I'm just going to select solid, select here, and I'm going to select my color, and it's going to be 037. All right, let's not put in the last one, which would be the border left. Let's do this in code view. So I'm going to go up here to my style CSS file. And right here is the style that we've been working on. We have the border top, right, and bottom. But I'm just going to go right after the semicolon, and I'm going to manually type in this left one for us. So left. And the reason why I'm showing you how to do this is in case you're having problems with the software and you need to manually make changes to it. So I'm going to just manually type into my CSS style sheet. Now make sure that you close with the curly braces this declaration, the CSS declaration. The other thing I noticed when my computer crashed, I'm going to go to my files panel. I'm going to close my CSS designer so that I can show you this. My styles CSS file is in the wrong place. I actually would like it to be in the CSS folder. So I'm just going to, inside of Dreamweaver, just drag it up there, and it automatically fixed this for me and update it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do File, Save As, and I just want to make sure that it is in there. Save, and I'm going to overwrite it and update the links. Yes. So if I go to my layout.html, go to my source code, and there it is, CSS styles. This is the proper folder structure for this file. I'm going to open back up my CSS designer, and I'm going to close my files panel, just close the whole tab group so that I have some more room. I'm going to make sure I am in my style CSS. I'm going to find that rule right here, the row nav bar, the one that we were just working on. I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to add to the end of that a colon and link. And I'm going to highlight this entire code, and I'm going to just do Control-C and copy this, and after the word link I'm going to put in a comma, and I'm going to Control-V paste. I'm going to get rid of where it says link, and I'm going to type visited. I'm going to go ahead and set the property for this. I'm going to select the text, and I'm going to select the color to be pound FFC, and I'm going to hit enter. let's just save all this. File, save all. Let's go back to the view that we were in before, Code Live. And now my links are yellow. I'm going to go back to this list item right here. The A tag, I'm going to right click, I'm going to duplicate this style. I'm going to type a colon hover. Gives me my code hint. I'm going to hit enter twice. I'm going to select on this hover one, I'm going to select the background property. I'm going to select the gradient right here. So I'm going to select the gradient color picker. I'm going to set the top gradient color stop to #069. I'm going to set the bottom color picker to #08A. And I'm going to get out of this by, you can either hit enter or I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to go to my text category. I'm going to select my color, and it's going to be #FFF, which is white, and hit enter. So I'm going to go back to my hover rule that we created, and I'm going to show set because I know I've made an error on this. If I go back to page 152, I was supposed to put in, if I go to background, because it's showing I don't have that, so I'm going to turn off show set, go to background. I have a linear gradient in here, but my linear gradient needs to be 0 degrees. So I skipped that step, so I'm just going to select enter. And now when I hover over, the new gradient is a mirror image of the one that was before, so the gradient has changed direction. Let's go ahead and save our file. File, save all. I'm going to go ahead and create a new rule. So I'm going to select the selectors pane. I'm going to select the plus symbol. I'm going to type in row. In my layout tab, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the width property. It's going to be in the pixels, and I'm going to add in 715 pixels and hit enter. This width allows the menu to fit to one line but still function properly in the responsive structure. We're going to go ahead and center that. So we're going to go to our margin property. So I'm going to scroll down so I find margin. I'm going to use the shorthand, which is 0 pixels, a space, and auto. And I'm going to hit enter. And that will center this in our website. I'm going to skip down to step number 8 on page 154 because the computer styles doesn't work correctly. So I'm going to look for more. So I'm just going to click the dot dot. This will jump me down to more. I'm going to go ahead and type in the word float. I'm going to hit the tab key. It'll jump me over. And I want the float to be none. And there's one last tweak we need to make. So we're going to create a new selector, and we're going to call this row dot navbar. Margin, we're going to do margin bottom, and we're going to change this to 0 pixels to get rid of any pixels that were at the bottom that a bootstrap rule had already applied. So if you read section number 9 on page 155, it explains we're overriding that style in our CSS file. All right, so I'm on to page 156 where I'm going to create header content. I'm going to select my second row, and I want to make sure that I've selected the header column small tag. So I'm selecting it down in my tag selector. I'm going to go to my window insert panel, and my insert panel is down here, so I'm just going to drag that up. I'm going to change to HTML, and I'm going to scroll down until I find the heading, which is right here, and I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to select the H2. The position assist interface appears, and we're going to go ahead and wrap the selection. So I'm going to select wrap. I'm going to go ahead and select nest. And I'm just going to take out my test content here. I don't need that anymore. And I have my H2 tag that's inside of my header element. I'm going to double click on my placeholder text up here. And I'm going to type in lowercase green start. And I'm going to hit the enter key to start a new line. This tells you on step number 8 to type green awareness in action in all uppercase. I don't recommend doing that. I'll show you how to change this to all uppercase. So green awareness in action. So I'm going to click outside of the orange box here. And it went ahead and created a paragraph element for us. What I would like to do is go down to line 48. In my paragraph tag, I'm going to go ahead and give this a unique identifier. And I'm just going to call this tagline. Now, this isn't in your book, but I want to show you how to add a unique identifier to this. We probably won't use the tagline again because it's probably just going to be used in the header section. So I'm going to go ahead and create a style. I'm going to first create a style for the header H2. So I'm going to go back to my styles, click on my style CSS, click on my selector, and I'm going to add a new selector. If I click in the H2 and then select add a selector, it's a little bit too specific for me. I'm just going to call this header H2. I'm not going to put the row in. It's going to be implied that it's going to be for the header. So I'm going to put enter. I'm going to uncheck my show properties. I'm going to close this for now, close this tab group. And I'm going to go ahead and select the text icon. I'm going to select the color to be #0F0. I'm going to hit enter. Our text changes to bright green. I'm going to go to my font family, and I'm going to select impact. So now we have the H2 as formatted by the font impact. I'm going to double click on the font size property, and I'm going to do %, and it's going to be 350%. So it's going to be 350% of 16 pixels because it's based on the percentages are factored from the size of the body element. And so it wants you to check out the bonus online lesson in the CSS basics for more detail. But by default, if you don't define in your body tag the value of your font, 16 pixels is what the browser chooses. So it's going to be 350% of 16 pixels. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to do the text align. And I'm going to select right here the center. It's going to move it to the center. And I'm going to look for the text shadow property. I'm going to scroll down here. And we're going to do the horizontal shadow. And it's going to be 0 pixels. And the next one is going to be 5 pixels. And the blur is going to be 5 pixels. And I'm going to select the color. And I want the RGBA, which is the A stands for alpha. And all I'm going to change is this very last value, which is the alpha value, and I'm going to change it to 0.40%. So it's going to have a little bit of transparency to it. and I'm going to just hit enter. So there's a little bit of a drop shadow that you can see that was placed on there. We're going to create a custom class, and it wants us to add a span tag around our green start, but we're going to do that in code view. I want to show you how to do this instead of using our quick tag editor. I'm going to type in the greater than sign span, and because I made an error, it didn't give me the closing span tag when I started typing. So I have my H2, I have the word green, an opening span, and start, and a closing span. But we're going to also give this a class, and we're going to call this class equals, and it's going to be logo white. So we don't need to type in the period when we're doing this in code view. So let's practice in code view so that you can get familiar with writing code, because more than likely you're not going to remember these tag editors, how to insert. It's so much easier to learn how to write your code in code view. All right, let's go over to our styles. Let's go ahead and select the selector. I'm going to add the selector, and the selector that I want is logo white. And I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to come down to the color property, so text, color, and I'm just going to hit enter. And it changed this to white for us, the word start. We're going to click the text where it says screen awareness, and you can see you made a typographical error, so I'm going to correct that and add an S in there. I'm just going to do it in code view. And I gave this a unique identifier of paragraph ID tagline, so I'm going to go to styles, add selector, and I'm going to add, and it's going to be, I just want it to be tagline because it's specific enough. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to change the font property to this. I'm going to go to the text editor. I'm going to change the font family to Lucinda. I'm going to change the font weight to bold. I'm going to change the text align to center. And in the text shadow, I'm going to go ahead and type in 3 pixels for the vertical shadow. The blur is going to be 5 pixels. Directional arrow is called a scrubby. You can hover over it, and you can scrub to the right, to the left, and it will make your number value go higher or lower. It doesn't quite work as well as it does in other Adobe software, so I just avoid it. I'm going to go to RGBA. I want to change my alpha, so this time just to 0.50. So I have, notice it changed the transparency. And I'm just going to hit enter. I'm going to scroll down where it says letter spacing, and I'm going to change my letter spacing to point. I'm going to use M's, and I'm going to do 0.5, so 0.5 M's. And the reason why we're using M's is because M's is a responsive unit of measurement for websites, so we want to use a unit of measurement that will be responsive. I'm going to do File, Save All. All right, so this ends part 1 of chapter 6.